So it's pretty much your worst nightmare. You turn on a computer, and instead of a login screen, you get an error message. You can get a number of error messages with Windows, and what you're looking at right now are the error messages that the owner of this all-in-one received and reached out to me. He's a friend of mine. He said, hey, can you do anything with this? And I said, well, I'll give it a try. So I turned it on, and this is what I saw as well. My first instinct was probably a bad master boot record, some kind of corruption within Windows, a failing hard drive. So when I turned it on, I did hear some strange clicking noises that were conducive to a bad hard drive. So the next thing that I knew I had to do was save the data. Now, in my case, I got lucky. I attempted the startup repair and it actually worked. Usually it doesn't. Usually you get in an endless loop of the repair failed. What do you want to do? You try repair again. It just keeps going on and on. I got very lucky. You may not. But in this case, I got lucky. I was able to get to the data. I was also able to establish that the hard drive is in fact failing. So to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, this is an 11-year-old all-in-one. It's a PC. It's not an Apple product. Many people have never seen an all-in-one PC, but they were pretty popular for a good while. But like a laptop, they had some issues. Overheating, lack of upgradability, and other things. This one is different. This one does allow you to do some upgrades, including the CPU. So after I examined it carefully and checked to make sure it was worth bringing back from the dead, I was given the okay, and I'm going to proceed from there. Now, take a look at the back of this thing. It has your standard USB ports and your HDMI, but it has something really great. It has your old style AV inputs. So you could actually hook up an old gaming console to this. And honestly, I would keep this for myself if he didn't want it back, because although it is a relic, it still has a lot of life left in it as a basic computer for Netflix, banking, things like that. When I'm done with it, it will be able to run Windows 10 and it will run much faster. So let's get into that right now. So here's some tips to keep in mind as you get ready to start your project. The first thing you want to do is find your service manual. You can usually get these online, and you want to review the disassembly instructions before you start. Go over them several times. There can be small details that you could overlook, such as how to disassemble the body of your computer. On this particular project, if I had not looked at the manual, I would have thought that I needed to pry the body panels off, but in fact, they only need to be slid off. So make sure that you're very clear on how you disassemble your machine. Have a clean work area. It is very important that your work area be one that you can see screws and small parts if you should drop them. A towel is okay. An electrostatic discharge mat or ESD mat is better. It's also a good idea to have some small containers for screws, parts, different things you may take off. And a little extra tip here, work from the furthest away back toward you. That way as you reassemble, you know that you work from the closest further away. If you have a lot of complicated parts to remove, this will help keep things in order. Get the right tools for the job. This is going to depend a lot on the type of project you have, but generally you want to have at least a screwdriver that allows you to change the tip out with an assortment of bits. These will include small Torx bits, Phillips number 1, Phillips number 2, and maybe a few other specific bits for your project. Again, with some research online, you may be able to find the size bits that you need for your machine. Document your project. There is nothing wrong with taking pictures, video, notes, sketches. Send up a smoke signal if you have to. Have a friend nearby to help you remember. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You just want to make sure that you're clear on where you're at and what you did in case you get pulled away suddenly by a crying child or a doorbell or a telephone call. Use caution and care. Don't over or under tighten the device's screws. Try to pay attention to how much force it took to remove the screw. That will give you an idea of how tight it should be when you put it back. But in general, make the screw snug, then a little bit more. These are very small threads. If you over tighten them, they will strip out and they can be a nightmare to remove. Don't make that mistake. Take great care with each component and treat it as if it is a fragile child. Follow best practice. This is a common term and it just simply means do the smartest, best thing. Don't worry about getting done quickly. Make sure you take time to do the job right. No one will ever know how long it took you to do the job, but they will know if you did it wrong. If it's your personal machine and you rush, you could cost yourself a lot of money. These are just some tips to help you. And remember, you can do this. Just take your time and believe in yourself. So here we are. It's time to get started. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these two body panels apart from each other. I found this information in the service manual. Again, you can easily see it would look like you could pry those off, but they actually come off quite easily. Now here you see this machine has one SODIMM chip of memory. That's the type of memory that laptops and a lot of all-in-ones use. They're very small. That's a 4 gigabyte stick, and I'm going to be replacing it with 16 gigabytes of much faster RAM. Now, as you watch, you're going to see that I'm going to struggle with this stick of RAM. I deliberately wanted to show this because this is not best practice. What I've done is I've skipped an important step in the service manual, and you will see why. It is very difficult to get that memory lined up in the lower channel. They stack on top of each other. They're not like in a desktop where they go side by side. They stack one on top of the other on each side. And it's so very close to being able to get it in, but it's not quite enough room. This would be a very tempting shortcut for most people because it does look like you can just put the RAM in, but this is not correct. I even used a tweezer. I didn't touch anything harmful. This is another terrible, terrible practice. It's a metallic object and I'm touching the RAM, I'm touching in the computer. Obviously, I'm not doing anything that's going to hurt, but it would be very tempting to try to pry the RAM into position. Now, I'm going to demonstrate the proper way to do this, but I first have to get the RAM back out. By doing it this way, I ran the risk of the RAM actually falling down inside the machine, and that would require me to take the entire machine apart, adding probably 45 minutes to my job. Again, I am simply hard-headedly trying to find a shortcut, and it's taking me longer to do it wrong. than it takes to do it right. This is a very good lesson to take note of, because if you're unfamiliar with doing this, you will think the easy answer is the right answer. Now, I'm going to actually do it the right way. So here I take my power screwdriver, and I'm going to start removing the series of very small screws. You can use a power screwdriver. I like this one in particular because it's not too powerful and it's a steady speed. It's about $40. It's rechargeable. It lasts a very long time. And I have a Phillips #1 bit in it. Now, a word of caution. Never use a drill, whether it's a corded drill or a battery-operated drill. They're very unbalanced. They are also very powerful, and you will damage screws. So if you don't have a power screwdriver, a regular screwdriver is absolutely fine. So you can see I'm taking these frame screws off around the body panel, and this will allow me better access to the memory. Now, according to the service manual, I should not take all the screws out because it can cause misalignment of some other components. And on that screw, I was holding the metal body plate so that it didn't spring up and throw the screw across the room. These screws are very tiny. I don't know if you can see them well on camera. I could barely see them in my hand. Now, as I go to put the memory in the right way, I'm going to reach underneath the metal panel, and with my other finger, I can now grab the memory and properly align it. Watch how quickly I'm able to insert this RAM into the slot. They go in much like an NVMe would. You bring it in at an angle about 45 degrees, and then once it's slotted, you press it down and the locks engage. Now I'm putting the second stick in right on top of it, which is much easier. And then I press it down and it locks in place. Now, just so you know, I am not rotating this monitor on its screen. I have a Lazy Susan underneath that I've set up for doing this type of work. If you don't have one, you can put a towel on top of something very sturdy to give you a soft surface and a slippery surface to help move a screen or a computer around on. It won't hurt it. Just make sure that it's something that's soft enough you would wipe your screen with, like a microfiber. That's another good way to provide yourself a rotatable platform. So now the memory is in. Look how much easier that was. By doing it the right way, it took me less time than doing it the wrong way. And I had no risk of damage to the components. Now I've grabbed my small screws and I'm beginning to put them in. Now, although they're very small, and as I said, the threads are very fine and can be damaged, there's no reason to be worried that you're gonna hurt something if you just follow best practice as I explained and don't over tighten. And remember, always,
screw in with confidence.
In just a moment, you'll see a screw actually drops out of my hand. And right now I'm looking for that tiny black screw. It actually bounced off of my worktop and landed on the floor. Thankfully, I have a light colored floor and I was able to find it. And I'm just going around the metal frame panel, more or less a backwards pattern, but I'm skipping around a little bit so that I evenly distribute the pressure. And as I said, this screwdriver is not so powerful that it will damage the head or over tighten the screw. Off to my side, you can see there's a black mat that I'm reaching into to get screws. That is a magnetized screw organizer. It has small pockets and dividers, and it's a silicone-based mat. Although it is magnetic, it won't hurt anything. Magnets of this type aren't harmful to a computer. You wouldn't want to go poking around on your motherboard with a magnetized screwdriver because that's just not a great idea. But generally speaking, a magnetized tip won't hurt anything you're going to use it on in your computer. Now I'm going to move on to changing the hard drive to a solid state drive. And this is a very common type of hard drive mount. So as you saw, I pulled up on the handle and I tried to remove it, but I couldn't. Well, that's because there's a retaining screw that if you weren't looking straight down, you would not see it. And you can tell that my screwdriver is actually at an angle here. So I'm going to remove the screw, and then the hard drive mount will slide out and up. It actually goes into what would be considered a hot swap plug, but in this case you would never want to pull the hard drive from the machine while the machine is on. It's just made that way for ease of installation because there's no cables to bother with, and it will automatically align itself. So now I'm just going to get the computer out of my way. And now I'm going to work on the hard drive, and you see I've cleared my work area so that I can have a firm surface to work with. So the first step here is I need to remove the old hard drive from the bay. And these screws come out just like any other hard drive screw would. These screws are actually in very tight. I was surprised. You could see that the screwdriver kind of rotated in my hand a little bit because of how tight it was. And so I decided to lay it down and give myself a better surface. And then I manually backed the screw off to prevent it from causing the tip to slip in it. And out slides the hard drive. And it is a full-size hard drive. That's going to lighten the computer by about 75,000 pounds. And now we're going to put a 4-ounce solid-state drive back in its place. As you can see, I simply lay the solid-state drive down and slide it into the carriage. I picked this up on Amazon for about $14. And it's an adapter that's made for this type of hard drive installation. I don't think it's specific to Lenovo, but I searched for Lenovo and the model number, and this is what I found. It was about a 5-minute search. So I'm very carefully mounting the solid-state drive with the solid-state drive screws that I have. They're a little bit smaller than most hard drive screws. The threads are fine. Again, you want to make sure you're lined up and the screw is straight, and just carefully tighten it. It does not take a lot of force to tighten a hard drive down. That is all there is to it. That was a very simple upgrade. That upgrade alone will speed this computer up tremendously, not to mention adding 16 gigabytes of new, faster RAM. Incidentally, the one stick of RAM that was in this computer was starting to show some signs that it may be failing, but it was actually cheaper for me to purchase 4 gigabyte sticks of faster RAM than it was to buy 3 sticks of the matching RAM that was already in the computer. So when you have to do an upgrade on an older machine like this, it's a good idea to do some extra research to see what's the best choice for you. You may find that it's actually too expensive to upgrade an old computer. In this case, we got really lucky. It actually made sense to do it, and we could have upgraded the CPU to an i5, but because this machine is not going to be a primary use machine, there was no need. At the time, I was second guessing that. I was thinking in my mind, maybe I should put a better processor in here. But once I got done with this upgrade, I was pleasantly surprised by how fast this machine performed on just these upgrades. Now there you can see my ESD strap is attached and it's on my upper arm. I will not tell you you absolutely have to use one. I will tell you it's a good idea to use one if it's not your machine. If it's your machine, you do what you want. But for me, as long as there's any possibility that I could move my feet and build up some charge and that 1 in a million chance occurs, I don't want to risk that. I would rather be safe than sorry. You can also wear it around your ankle if you choose to. It doesn't matter as long as it doesn't get in your way. Do not wear it right around your wrist. It will cause you aggravation. Also, it is not going to work if it's not hooked up to something that can dissipate any static charge. Keep that in mind. And if you have a Live Strong bracelet, that will not help you. So here I'm putting the hard drive enclosure back into its tray. It's a little bit fiddly, but once it gets lined up, it pops in. I press the handle down to secure it. And now I'm just going to replace that hold down screw and make sure it's good and snug. I let the screwdriver do the work. It's plenty secure. And now it's time to replace the back panels. Now these back panels slide in notches and they have to be lined up just a certain way. They have friction tabs on them that take a little bit of force once you get them lined up. And you can see that I'm trying to make sure everything is lined up on the sides. And believe it or not, this is not the correct position to apply these panels. There's 2 tabs that I just pointed to that are not wanting to line up. In a moment, I'm going to rotate the machine, and now watch how easily it slides. Now, I didn't hurt it by banging it. Every now and then a computer needs to be slapped around some to keep it in line. So don't be afraid to give it a love tap. And again, I'm going to rotate the machine, and the panel slides in place perfectly. So I gave you some examples of doing it the hard way and doing it the right way. So now you can see we have a fully assembled machine. I'm going to give it a wipe down with some 100% pure alcohol just to remove any grease from my fingers, any old oil. This was a very, very clean machine. It only had one very small spot of dust inside it that I took care of off camera. The rest of it inside was immaculate. That is very rare on an old machine, and I was very pleased that it was so clean because that gave me a sign that that would probably be the extent of this job, just doing the upgrade. Occasionally, if you work on an old machine that's not yours, you could have some critters come out of it. If you put a machine in a closet for a couple of years, don't be surprised to find something has made a home out of your computer. And so that concludes the upgrade. Now it's time to test it. And we're back. So as you can see, we are on Windows 10 now. So let me tell you a little bit about this computer. It started off as an 11-year-old all-in-one with a Core i3 processor, 3.3 gigahertz, running Windows 7 with a standard hard drive and 4 gigabytes of DDR3 memory. After I did my diagnosis and determined that yes, the hard drive was failing, I went ahead and backed up all the important files, pictures, documents, things like that while I could. When you have a hard drive going bad, the worst thing you can do is start stressing it. The smart thing is immediately back up anything off it that you can get off. And it can fail while you're doing that. I've had that happen. So don't test it. Take the hint that it's giving you and get ready to put in a new hard drive, and by all means put in a solid state drive. So the upgrade that I did is put in 16 gigabytes of faster RAM. Now, when it comes to buying hardware for an old computer like this, you have to do a little bit of research. You have to make sure that you're getting the right type of hardware, whether it be memory, whether it's a processor, whatever it is. You need to make sure it's compatible. In this case, I was able to put in faster memory cheaper than just putting 3 additional sticks of the same memory. So that was a real nice break. Also, I added a solid state drive, 1 terabyte, and that made an incredible difference on this computer. And then I installed Windows 10. So I've done all the updates on it. The machine is running like a well-lubed clock. It really is a joy to work with this machine, and it's impressive that at 11 years old, it is as convenient to use as a modern computer is. Now, I'm not going to show you a lot on the screen because of the screen flicker that is inherent with old monitors. However, I do want you to look at what's happening in Task Manager right now. At idle, the utilization of the CPU is at 1%. It's just sitting there cruising. It does have all 16 gigabytes of memory, as you can see. It's got a little bit used by Windows, which is standard, 13.3 available. The solid state drive is just sitting inactive. And that's what we want to see. Now, the machine can do everything that you would do with any computer. I wouldn't say it's a gaming machine, but it can certainly play videos like this one, for example. And I bookmarked it. The computer is running better than it was in its old state. So, to sum everything up, if you have an old computer that you gave up on, take that computer out, check it out. See what it takes to bring that computer current, at least to Windows 10. Maybe it needs memory, maybe it needs a graphics card, maybe it needs a processor. You are going to save a lot of money by upgrading that computer compared to buying a new computer. But maybe not always. There are times when a computer is too far gone to upgrade. You can upgrade this machine to an i5 processor, but it wouldn't be worth that. It would stress the rest of the components, and so I opted to not go that route. The i3 is actually a very good processor. It doesn't get enough credit. If you choose to upgrade, I can't stress enough, research, ask questions, look online, go to the manufacturer's website. You'll find a wealth of information there. You can reach out to me. You can either email me, my email address is down below, or you can just post a question in the comment section. I'll do my best to find out whether or not it would be a good idea for you to upgrade your machine. It just might not be. And I'll be honest with you about it. Now, did I do this job for free? No, I didn't. My friend paid for the parts, and he's about $150, I think, or so into this. And rather than having to buy an entirely new computer to have as a second computer in the house, he's got what amounts to a brand new computer for $150. And it's a touch screen. Not many people have a touch screen anymore, and they're very nice to work with. So, if you enjoy this kind of content, and if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and hit that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. And leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of this video, if it helped you out, if it helped you make a decision that you're going to upgrade your computer. And as always, thank you for joining me in Gibby's World of Tech.